298 days, 4 hours until we play the team up north, 28 days until spring ball, and 23 hours until those fax machines starts pumping in. And so I apologize if I lose my train of thought right now, but we're knee deep in some really cool stuff as far as trying to bring some really good players into Ohio State. Honored to be here. It's great to be back home. The journey has been full circle. In 1996, I came to Ohio State to get a graduate degree and was brought in by my mentor and very close friend and almost like a father to her, my second father, and that's Earl Bruce. From there, I went to Illinois State to coach, and then I went to Colorado State, got my first big taste of major college football. Back then, we couldn't afford to fly back and forth on weekends because we just didn't have the budget, so we'd go out sometimes for a month at a time, sometimes 6 weeks at a time recruiting. That was really hard on your family, and I had young children at the time, and like your little girls, little kids sometimes jump in bed with you in the middle of the night. I ain't been home in about 6 weeks. And I get up to take the shower in the morning, and my little girl jumped in the bed with us in the middle of the night, and she said, "Mommy, is that Daddy?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Darn right that's Daddy. It better be Daddy." From there, I went to Notre Dame and had another opportunity to work for a legend, and Lou Holtz was the guy that hired me. And I'm not kidding you when I tell you this. He expects you to go out. If you're with him the previous day, you have to go out and work the traffic pattern. I'm serious. He expects you to go out and work the traffic pattern to find out, because he wasn't going to sit in traffic. I didn't know that. So I pick him up in Chicago to go spring recruiting, and he had to speak. I picked him up from golf. I was going to take him around for a little bit. Then I was going to take him to a banquet he had to speak at that night. So I pick him up, and he's in his golf attire, and we get stuck in Chicago traffic, and we're in a standstill for about an hour and a half. And this is before camera phones, thank God. And so I'm in a car with a 155-pound man, and he's screaming at me. This is my first real experience with him. And we're sitting there in traffic, and then everybody starts to figure out it's Lou Holtz. So people are getting out of the cars and taking pictures and everything else. He gets so angry with me because we're going to be late. He starts stripping down because he's going to change his clothes right in the car. And people are standing around a car, and here's a guy, 155 pounds in his underwear, screaming at me. And that was another taste of big-time college football. From there, I got a chance to go be a head coach. I got an opportunity. I got a phone call from Bowling Green, and Lou Holtz was very involved. Earl Bruce was very involved. I went and interviewed. They offered me the job. I loved Notre Dame. I said, I'm not going to take the job, so I had to make a couple hard phone calls. I called Earl Bruce, and he used some language I'm not going to share with you today that why I should take the job. And then also I called Coach Holtz, and I said, "Coach, I'm going to turn this job down." And he said, "Why?" That's because I really believe it's a bad job. He goes, "Of course it's a bad job. If it's a good job, you think they'd be calling you?" From there, I went to Utah, and a really, really neat group of people. You had the Mormon, you had the non-Mormon, you had the Polynesians, which I've never really coached Polynesians. About 1/3 of our team, 1/4 of our team were Polynesian kids. You had the African-American kids, you had the white kids. It was one of the most unique melting pots of college football. And our first champions banquet we had at my house, we have all the kids come over, and we had a bunch of married players, and you could see the separation of each culture. And so our mission was to bring those cultures together and become one. And it was one of the greatest rewards to see that team come together. And we win the first championship in 60 years at Utah in our first year. And we're getting ready to play Southern Miss. And so we go down to play Southern Miss, and we're in Memphis. And if you've ever been to Hattiesburg, there's not a whole lot of Polynesians, I imagine, in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And so I'm sitting there talking to one of their young black kid. We're sitting there talking to him, and he's a great player, great kid. We're sitting there having a great time. And I look over him, and one by one, we have our big Polynesian kids walking by, the dark hair, dark skin, dark eyes, and 300, 350-pound guys walking by. And he out of the blue with his hard Southern accent said, "Coach, I've never seen so many big Puerto Ricans in my entire life." And after I wiped all the stuff off my face from laughing so hard, I said, "What did you just say?" And he said, "Puerto Ricans." I said, "No, they're not Puerto Ricans. They're Polynesians." And he looked at me even more confused. I said, "Tongans, Samoans." And he's even more confused. And I said, "You know what? Those are some pretty damn big Puerto Ricans we have on our team." From there, I went to University of Florida, and everybody warned me about the heat, and I, thinking I'm a tough guy, I said, don't worry about the heat. We're going to practice when we practice. And so we didn't really adjust our practice schedule very much. In our first training camp, there was I think it was 22 days straight of over 110 heat index. And about halfway through that run of those hot days, I come walking off the practice field, and it's the hottest thing I ever experienced in my life. And you feel like, through a prize fight by the time, just one practice. And so I walk in, they said, hey, so-and-so's one upstairs, I think he's going to quit. He's a young walk-on from up north. And so I go up to my office, and I see him sitting there, and you can tell he's pretty flustered and real pale looking, like something's really wrong. And I said, come on in here, sit down. I said, what's going on? And his lower lip started shaking, and he said, Coach, I have to leave. I said, why? He goes, you don't understand, it's so hot here. I understand it's hot. He said, no, you don't understand. And his lower lip, and tears started coming out as he goes, it's really hot here, and I can't take this much longer. I said, listen, we have one more week of 2 days, you're going to be fine. Stick it out, you're going to get a great education. He goes, Coach, and by now we're in a panic situation with the tears and the whole deal. He goes, Coach, you don't understand? I go, what? He said, I saw the devil today out on the practice field. And I still like the horns and the pitchfork, and he said, yeah. And I said, shook his hand, gave him a big hug. I said, you got to go. So he left. And then finally it comes full circle. Last year I get hired as in my home state to be the head football coach of The Ohio State University. And one of my first things I had to do after signing day was go speak at our Coaches Association banquet or dinner, and that's out at Easton. And I come walking in and wearing my Ohio State stuff and ready to go. It's my first chance as the head coach to really address our group of coaches. And I come walking in, and a young lady stops me and says, you need a badge to go in the big banquet room. And I said, I didn't have a badge. No one gave me a badge. I said, no, I'm the head coach at Ohio State. I have to speak. She goes, no, you're not. I said, no, I'm the head coach at Ohio State. So that was my welcome into the great state of Ohio. What do I really do for a living? I convince 17 and 18-year-olds to go to school here. And it's a lot of fun, right, Brutus? It's not a lot of fun. Right now, we're down to the wire. We had some great news in the last few weeks, and this could be a heck of a class. And you can tell my focus, all of our focuses right now are, we have a bunch of, I'm 48, I'm not the youngest, so there's some 55-year-old fools going to be sitting around like 2-year-olds waiting around a fax machine tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. That's really what I do for a living. And I'm going to give you a couple code words that when you hear, because of Rivals, Scout, Internet, all this nonsense, you're going to have all kinds of stories, but I'm going to give you a couple code words that you need to know. So when you hear early commit, all that early commit, so in the real lingo, that means you're one of the final three, okay? So when a young man says, I'm coming to Ohio State, I know, everybody should know, just calm down, that means we're in the final three. When the young man says 85, I always ask this, and deep in my heart, I laugh every time I get the answer. What chance do we have of getting you? 0 means you're not coming. 100 means you're done. It's over. You're a Buckeye. And when they give you 85%, 90%, you cut that right in half, and that's really where you stand with the young man. And then when you hear the word, this is my uncle, this is my mentor, this is my advisor, watch out, stand up, and go the other way because it's probably someone you don't need to be with. You know, we're getting ready to have a big recruiting weekend, and I kind of chewed out my staff pretty good, and I said, you know, we're real dull. We don't have much energy in our staff, and we need to, you know, it's all about creativity and enthusiasm and passion in recruiting. Obviously, it's about selling a great product, but we need something to make us different because every one of these kids, imagine, they're going to fly into some city, they're going to be around coaches. Everybody has a stake. Everybody's got nice carpet. They got nice facilities. What's going to make us stand out? And I wanted our staff to really have a little enthusiasm about it. So Stan Drayton, our running back coach, we're down here at downtown at Hyde Park. Fantastic restaurant. They take really good care of us. And so all the parents are sitting there, and it's kind of dull, and I'm kind of looking around trying to get our coaches to do something to create a little memory. And so all of a sudden, Stan Drayton and one of the fathers, Stan Drayton, if he'd be the first one to come up and tell you how of a great athlete he was back when he played. He's not that great of an athlete, but he's a great coach and a great member of our staff. And so I kind of give Stan the nod, like, hey, let's pick this thing up a little bit. So all of a sudden I start hearing him, and I went over and kind of chirping with this other father, about who could win in a race. And that, little did I know, I mean, I go sit back down with my wife and other family, and I mean, it starts getting very heated and violent over there. Who's faster? So you got these two 50-year-old, bad-looking 50-year-old men getting ready to go at it. The next thing I know, Stan Drayton stands up, pushes his chair back. We'll do it right, and he starts screaming in this restaurant. Everybody's looking around, and the dad stands up and he starts screaming, and who's faster? And so all of a sudden they get up and they start walking outside. The doors swing open on High Street. Here's two 50-year-old men going to get in a stance, and I walk out and I'm like, what do I do? Someone's going to get hurt. Worse than that, my guy might get beat. But then I start thinking, we might get this kid. So I'm like, go race, go ahead, go race. And so they went out there, they cleared the streets, they actually stopped the cars, and these two old guys are going to get ready to run. And I'm glad to say that they took one step and both of them kind of just were going to see if each other was going to do it, and they both stopped. Many, many recruiting stories that we've experienced, and it's all going to come to fruition tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. I think you're really going to like it. I really do. Like anything else, it's the last one or two that push it over the top. So I'm sure you'll join me tomorrow in celebrating a great class that comes in, because that's what we do. And that's the bloodline of who we are. Honored to be here. I'm honored to be in Columbus, Ohio. This is a very unique. The one advantage I have over a lot of people is the journeys I've had around the east, south, west, and different parts of the country, and it's great to come back to the home state. And our mission statement has been very clear from the first day our staff has set foot on this campus. Of my 9 assistants, 8 are from the state of Ohio. That's not by accident. It is different. It's home, and with that home, it's an enormous responsibility. I know all the former players, and if I didn't know them, I got to meet Cornelius Green the other day. And I mean, you talk about a 3-year-old. I wanted to ask him. I didn't think it was appropriate. I wanted to ask him for his autograph because that's all I remember. And so we have an enormous obligation to make this great state of Ohio proud, to make our former players proud, to make the current student body proud. And with that comes enormous responsibility and obligation. And I didn't want to hand that off to people that weren't from this area or understood the tradition and the rivalry. Ohio State is very unique. The relationship we have with this great city, big city, a city that doesn't have professional football, doesn't have professional baseball, major league level. It is the Buckeyes, and we're honored. It's just a big part of recruiting to be able. You notice we do our recruiting dinners not off in some suburb. We come right downtown because we want them to see and be a part. This is a big selling point for our great campus and great university. A little history lesson, and I know many people are aware of this, but I'm aware because I was here in 1986, how much Ohio State has changed. Much different university. The administration, presidents, and higher-ups, Board of Trustees made a decision. I'm not quite sure when, but I've been kind of doing some research because it was not like this back when I thank God, because I don't think I would have been able to get grad school back then because it's much difficult. We are an elite school. We recruit elite players and athletes, and not only athletes, but student athletes. We can't get the normal guy in school that maybe other people can get in school. And that's not a shortcoming. That's something we're very proud of. Ohio State University, under the direction of our president, President Gee, and my boss, as good an athletic director and man as I've ever been around, Gene Smith, is all about excellence. You look around our program, you look around at the way our athletes graduate, the GPAs, and all the great statistics that have been occurred over the last few years. That's not by accident. And I'd like to right now say thank you to our athletic director and give him a round of applause for the great job he does here at Ohio State, Gene Smith. A quick comment about this team, because the 2012 team, I know we're supposed to let them go, but I can't. 2012, we had some news that we couldn't play in a bowl game. Those kids could have picked up and gone, every one of them. I'm not sure everyone's aware of that. Every young man and every in this world about I and me, these kids could have been about I and about me. They could have walked out those doors without penalty and played. They stuck around. I wasn't quite sure why, but they did stick around. We went through the spring practice, went through the off season in the summer, and I finally found out why. It's because of their genuine love for this place, Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, but it's also because of their love for one another. We were a very, very poor team to start the season. I can say that now, but I didn't really want to share that too publicly early on, but we were bad. You look at those first 2-3 games, that wasn't a good team on the field. That was a team of evaluators. And that when you have players that are evaluating situations, evaluating coaches, evaluating scheme, you're a really bad team. I gave a talk the other night that the general fan says when you see a bad football team, usually people in the media, they say it's because you got bad players. That's usually not the case. Every school in this country has great players. Now, there's a little difference, but I mean, for the most part, when you get to high-level college football, everybody's got great players. If the team's not playing well, it's because there's something wrong. There's something wrong with the administration of the football team, with the coaching staff, with some leaders on your team. There's something wrong because you're asking, it's the greatest team sport of all. There can be something, you can have one guy tear a team down. That one guy can grab 3 guys, 5 guys, 6 guys, 8 guys, and next thing you know, you got a very bad team. I didn't say bad guys, but bad teams. It's very fragile, but it's not by accident. And what happened was I saw a team that were a bunch of evaluators. And I kept our strength coach and I are very close about the motivation of this team. And what I found out, we had a bad team with good people, which didn't equate to me. If a bad team with bad people, I get it. You just have to implode the whole thing, get them out of here, and start fresh. And we weren't willing to do that because, once again, I found out we had great kids. We had great kids that loved this university, loved each other, but they were evaluating too much of our program. We had a couple very intense, hard meetings about where we were at. And then on September 29th at 11:22 a.m. in our pregame meal in East Lansing, Michigan, we had one of the greatest moments, I think, in Ohio State history, and that was we had a very businesslike, impassioned speech and conversation about what we expected if we're going to move forward. We were getting ready to play Michigan State, very good team, on the road, and then Nebraska. I knew exactly what was going to happen. If we play like we did early in the season, we're going to be 0-2 in the Big Ten. It was time to We had to shock the team a little bit. I asked them to grab a toast of championship water. We filled our glasses with water. Everybody stood up, and we asked them to make a toast to each other. But don't you dare put your glass in the middle and you not give us your heart and let us coach you. Because sometimes when you open your heart, you get exposed. And bad things, not necessarily bad things, but very uncomfortable things can happen. And on that day, those kids opened their hearts, and they let us coach them as hard as we possibly could. You can see a gradual increase to the point where when we finished the season against our rival, that wasn't just an average team, that wasn't a good team, that was a great team. And it's all give credit to where credit is due, that group of seniors. That same group of seniors that are one of 6 undefeated teams made a decision to open their hearts for the love of this university and each other to go down as one of the great teams in Ohio State history. So it was a great year, and it's time to move from them to this year. Our mantra this year is going to be truth. You're going to hear me talk about that quite often. Whenever you have a good season, I've seen teams with good seasons, and it's hard to walk to class without 7, 8, maybe 100 people telling you how good you are. It's hard to go home over Christmas break and without people telling you how good you are. In quite honest terms, we're not that good. We're a working man's team that has to keep figuring out ways to win games, which is fine, as long as you have good people, but they know where you're at. The minute you sit back and you think we have the answer, you're a very, very average team. This team will work as harder than any team that's ever come through those great walls in Ohio State history, because we're going to tell them exactly where they're at. That started yesterday at 6 o'clock p.m. after we had an hour-and-a-half workout. That team knows exactly where we're at. So you will be proud of the 2013 team, but it all starts tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. So I invite you to act like a 2-year-old. Even if you're a 50-year-old man, get up and follow the internet, because you'll hear exactly who's going to be rolling through these doors, and that's the future of Ohio State football. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be in a great state of Ohio. I'm honored to work for my boss and the President Gee, and most of all, I'm honored to represent and wear the scarlet and gray every day and do the best we can to make the great state of Ohio proud. You guys have a great day. God bless you.